There are moments when the world shifts on its axis, not with a bang, but with the quiet click of a door closing. For me, that moment arrived on a crisp December evening, not in a grand hall, but in the sterile silence of a hospital waiting room. My daughter Clara sat across from me, her face pale, her eyes fixed on the flickering news channel above our heads. Her husband, Arthur, a man whose ambition had always outstripped his empathy, stood by the window, his back to us, a silent, imposing wall. My wife, Ilara, Clara's mother, was gone. The diagnosis had been swift, brutal. Now only the echoes of her laughter remained in our quiet home, and the hollow ache in my chest. I'd spent 40 years building a life with Ilara, a life centered around our daughter, our small, cozy world. After Ilara, the foundations crumbled, leaving me adrift. Clara, my only child, had always been my anchor, but in the months following Ilara's passing, I watched as she drifted further away, pulled by the currents of her new life with Arthur. Their apartment, a gleaming monument to modern success, felt miles away from my old, comfortable house. Their world was one of carefully curated appearances, expensive dinners, and networking events. My world was now just me and the ghost of Ilara. The first Christmas after Ilara was gone, I tried to bridge the gap. I spent weeks crafting a wooden music box for Clara, inlaid with mother of pearl, a replica of the one Ilara had loved, a gift from her own mother on her 16th birthday. It was a piece of my heart, a tangible memory of her mother's joy. I wrapped it carefully, drove to their opulent apartment, and walked into a room buzzing with Arthur's business associates. Clara greeted me with a strained smile, a quick kiss on my cheek, then turned back to her guests. Arthur, ever the gracious host, took the box from my hands. He examined the intricate inlay with a dismissive glance, a flicker of something I couldn't quite place in his eyes. Hand-carved, is it? Quaint, he said, his voice carrying just enough to be heard by those nearby. Then, with a casual shrug, he placed it on a polished mahogany side table, half hidden by a towering floral arrangement of white lilies. It felt like a deliberate act, a silent declaration of where I stood in their new, polished world. I saw Clara glance at the box, then at me. Her eyes held a fleeting apology, quickly masked by a bright, social smile. That night, I ate alone in a corner of their grand dining room, watching my daughter laugh with strangers, a chasm growing between us with every passing minute. I left early, the music box still on the side table, untouched. The visits grew less frequent. Calls became shorter. I was no longer a father, but an obligation, a relic of a past Clara seemed eager to outgrow. My attempts to connect, to share stories of Ilara, were met with polite nods, then quickly redirected to Arthur's latest triumph, or Clara's busy schedule. It was a slow, subtle erasure, a quiet fading from their lives. Then came the phone call, 3 months after Ilara's death. Clara's voice was tight, formal. "Dad, Arthur and I are hosting a charity gala next month. It's very important for his career. We need you to not be there." My heart sank. Not be there? Clara, why? It's a very high-profile event, and you don't really fit in with that crowd. Arthur thinks it would be better if you just stayed home. The words hung in the air, a blunt instrument. I was an embarrassment, a smudge on their pristine image. I felt a coldness spread through me, a chilling realization that my daughter had chosen her new life, her new family, over me. I hung up, the phone feeling heavy in my hand, the silence in my house suddenly deafening. I spent the next few months in a fog, the house feeling emptier than ever. I tried to reach out to Clara, leaving voicemails, sending texts. Most went unanswered. When she did call back, it was brief, distant. The chasm had become a canyon. One afternoon, a letter arrived. It was from a law firm, a formal notice regarding Ilara's estate. It stated that per Ilara's will, a significant portion of her assets, including a small but valuable plot of land she had inherited from her grandmother in the Sonoma Valley, was to be held in trust for Clara, to be released upon my passing, or upon Clara demonstrating true financial independence and stability, as judged by an independent arbiter. The letter also stated that I, as the executor, had full discretion over the management of these assets until such time. I stared at the document, a strange mix of emotions swirling within me. Ilara, ever the planner, had foreseen this. She had always worried about Clara's susceptibility to Arthur's influence, her tendency to prioritize status over genuine connection. This wasn't about money. It was about protecting Clara, even from herself. I decided then, I wouldn't beg for a place at their table. I wouldn't be an inconvenience. I would find my own way, just as Ilara had always encouraged me to do. I sold the house, the one filled with so many memories of Ilara and Clara. It was a painful decision, but a necessary one. I kept only a few boxes of Ilara's most cherished possessions, and a small, faded photograph of Clara as a child, her arms wrapped around my neck, her smile wide and unburdened. With the proceeds from the sale and Ilara's trust in my mind, I bought a small, dilapidated boat, a forgotten relic of a bygone era. It was moored in a quiet marina, far from the city's glare. I named her the Ilara's Legacy. This would be my new project, my new life. I would restore her, piece by piece, just as I was trying to restore myself. I left a single letter for Clara, placed prominently on the kitchen counter of the empty house. It was short, concise. Clara, I have chosen a third option. I hope one day you find yours. Dad. I didn't wait for a response. I drove away, the city lights fading in my rearview mirror, a strange sense of liberation washing over me. The next few months were a blur of sawdust, paint, and the rhythmic lapping of water against the hull. I learned to sand, to caulk, to repair engines. My hands, once accustomed to blueprints and ledgers, now knew the feel of wood grain and the smell of marine varnish. The marina became my sanctuary, the other boat owners my new, unexpected community. They were a motley crew, weathered and wise, and they accepted me without question, without judgment. I didn't hear from Clara. The silence was deafening at first, then slowly, it became a balm. I focused on the boat, on the physical act of creation, of bringing something broken back to life. It was a slow, arduous process, but with every repaired plank, every polished brass fitting, I felt a piece of myself mending too. One afternoon, as I was sanding the deck, a small red Mini Cooper pulled up to the marina. A woman emerged, her hair a familiar shade of auburn, her posture stiff. It was Clara. She stood at the edge of the dock, looking out at the boats, her eyes scanning, searching. She looked tired, her usual polished demeanor replaced by a fragile vulnerability. I didn't move. I just watched her, my heart doing a complicated dance in my chest. She spotted the Ilara's Legacy, her eyes widening slightly as she read the name I had painstakingly carved into the transom. She walked slowly down the dock, her footsteps echoing in the quiet afternoon. "Dad?" Her voice was soft, hesitant, a whisper against the gentle breeze. I put down my sander and turned to face her. "Clara." She stopped a few feet away, her gaze sweeping over the boat, then settling on me. My hands were calloused, my clothes stained with paint. I was a far cry from the suited father she had once known. I got your letter," she said, her voice barely audible. "And then, the lawyers contacted me, about Mom's trust." I nodded. Ilara always had a way of looking ahead. She looked down at her hands, then back up at me, her eyes glistening. "Arthur, he left. When he found out about the trust, he said I was a liability, that I wasn't worth the trouble." A pang of something, not triumph, but a deep, quiet sadness went through me. I had known Arthur was an opportunist, but to hear it confirmed, to see the pain it had caused my daughter, was still a blow. I didn't understand, Dad," she continued, a tear tracing a path down her cheek. I thought I was building a life, but it was just his life, and I was just a part of it." She finally looked at me, truly looked at me, for the first time in a long time. The mask was gone, replaced by raw emotion. "I missed you, Dad. I missed us." I walked towards her, my arms open. She stepped into them, her body shaking with sobs. I held her tight, the familiar weight of her in my arms, a comfort I hadn't realized I had so desperately craved. "I'm so sorry," she whispered into my shoulder, "for everything, for not seeing you, for letting him for letting him make me forget what truly matters. "It's okay, Clara," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "It's okay. We all lose our way sometimes." We stood there for a long time, the silence no longer empty but filled with the quiet hum of reconciliation. When she finally pulled back, her eyes were still red, but a new light had entered them. "What is this place?" she asked, gesturing around the marina. "And this boat?" "This is my new beginning," I said, a small smile playing on my lips. "And this boat, this is Ilara's legacy, and mine. I'm almost done restoring her. She's seaworthy again." Clara looked at the boat, then back at me. Can I help? Can I learn?" I looked at my daughter, truly seeing her for the first time in years. The polished veneer was gone, replaced by a genuine curiosity, a desire to connect, to rebuild. "Of course, Clara," I said, my voice full of a hope I hadn't felt in a long time. "There's always room for another hand on deck." That day marked a new chapter for us. Clara started visiting regularly, not out of obligation, but out of a genuine desire to learn, to connect. She traded her designer clothes for work overalls, her high heels for sturdy boots. She learned to sand, to paint, to tie knots. We talked for hours about Ilara, about our lives, about the future. The chasm between us slowly, steadily, began to close. The Ilara's legacy finally set sail on a bright spring morning, Clara at the helm, her face beaming. We sailed out into the open water, the wind in our hair, the sun on our faces. It wasn't about revenge or getting even. It was about choosing myself, about protecting the legacy of love Ilara had left behind, and in doing so, finding my way back to my daughter. This story is a work of fiction. Any resemblance to real people, events, or places is purely coincidental.